You won't believe what happened when my service dog, a golden beacon of comfort and protection, was suddenly doused in chemical spray by a self-appointed HOA vigilante, only to watch her entire demeanor freeze in terror when the flashing lights of the police made her, and me, realize it was more than just a neighborhood feud. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because this jaw-dropping tale of courage, chaos, and unexpected justice is one you can't afford to miss. I never expected that routine Wednesday afternoon, the kind that starts with an eager rattle of paws and a wagging tail, as the moment when my heart would twist into a snarled knot of fury and fear, the moment when my sweet, undemanding service dog, Faith, would be lunging forward not toward the neighbor's cats or the mailman, but away from something far worse, reacting in confusion and pain as Karen, the nightmare next door with impeccable lawns and a glare as sharp as pruning shears, stepped out onto her pristine concrete porch and sprayed Faith full in the muzzle without warning, as if Faith were some stray that didn't belong, my voice catching in my throat as the cold mist hit her fur and whiskers, and a stunned yelp rising in my chest at the sight of her halting mid-stride, her entire body freezing as if turned to stone, her expressive eyes wide, ears pinned, a splatter of venomous substance glistening in the afternoon sun, and the shock lanced through me in icy shards, my brain spinning with incredulity, because this was Faith, my constant companion, trained to remain calm and kind, my eyes when mine faltered, and now she was recoiling, terrified, uncertain, and I was racing to her side, heart pounding as fury and fear warred inside me, squeezing my chest so tight I thought I'd crack. With trembling fingers I checked her for damage, gently examining her muzzle, breathing prayers she'd be okay, and her eyes flickered toward me, confusion melting into trust, but her body still coiled uneasily, every hair bristling, every instinct screaming that something was dreadfully wrong, and all I could think was, "You cannot do this. You will not get away with this." Karen, for all her immaculate hedges and perfectly trimmed hydrangeas, for all her smug posturing at community meetings and her sanctimonious diatribes about property values and covenants, could not obliterate my bond with Faith, could not erase the respect for service animals enshrined in federal law, and yet, she had just endangered us both. I scooped Dream, our second dog, a calmer soul, into my arms as Faith trembled, and I marched, belligerently, angrily, brokenly, toward Karen's front door, teeth bared in rage, demanding answers through tight lips, my voice trembling even as I tried to sound controlled, accusing her, reminding her of the Americans with Disabilities Act, explaining how service animals were legally protected, how what she'd done was not only cruelty but criminal, how spraying an animal used to support a person with a disability could very well constitute assault, and hope that perhaps the terrors I'd seen in Faith's eyes might stir something in her conscience, or at least fear of legal consequence. And as I raged, holding Faith protectively at my side, I never imagined she'd do what she did next. Freeze even more, this time from fear not just of the spray, but of the possibility of more violence. And yet, just then, as neighbors began to trickle out onto their porches, drawn by the commotion, I heard the whine of sirens approaching. I had called 911, voice strained, words fumbling in anger and worry and disbelief, and the approaching police marked the sharpest pivot in that surreal afternoon, because Karen's facade cracked, her composure slipping like wax under heat, her eyes darting around. Guilt plastered across her face. She tried to recast the incident as an accident. I thought it was stray spray for ants. She stammered, gesturing toward a can on her porch, but the officers, professional and unblinking, asked her to replicate her actions, to explain what she had in her hand, as Faith huddled close to me, trembling, and the leaders among the officers, noting the service vest Faith wore, asked their partner to bring up federal law, asked if I was aware of the legal standing of service animals, and confirmed that harming one, especially in a public or residential space, is indeed a federal offense, carrying heavy penalties. And in that moment, when the calm voices of law enforcement echoed the truth I'd held fiercely in my heart, that no piece of law decorum, no tyrannical rule from a self-elected volunteer board could override a person's rights, I watched horror turn to panic in Karen's eyes, saw her mouth gape and her head swivel in disbelief as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. And then came the twist so surreal it felt like a dream. As one officer gently checked Faith's breathing and another patted down Karen for identification, a car pulled up behind the police cruiser, a sleek black SUV, and out stepped a man in a sharp suit, whose confident stride and crisp speech announced not just authority but insistence. He approached calmly, hand extended politely to the lead officer, introduced himself as Karen's lawyer, a local law specialist, there to clarify and mitigate, to prevent any escalation. Yet I noted that even as he spoke smooth assurances, he kept one hand behind his back, where a badge glinted faintly in the shade, a private investigator's badge, and I realized, with my heart accelerating again, that there was more at play here than a random WA conflict. Someone had been watching Karen, apparently suspecting she had a pattern, not just of petty cruelty but of misusing WA authority to harass residents with medical or mobility issues, and here was this private eye, ready to expose a string of whispered complaints, compiled evidence of other incidents she had reported, neighbors whose lawn parties detracted from the aesthetic, a blind woman whose guide dog she tried to prohibit from certain sidewalks, an asthma-suffering child whose medical diffuser her board outlawed. And as he laid out the files, as the officers leafed through the complaints and the documentation of the spray incident, running the law one more time, I felt propelled into a kind of stunned clarity. This wasn't just about my faith. This was about institutional cruelty, about the abuse of surface-level power cloaked in lawn care psychosis. And as the investigation deepened, the police requested statements, canvassed neighbors, lined up testimonies from those previously intimidated by Karen's thin veneer of authority, and I sat there with Faith's head in my lap, still trembling, but gradually nuzzling me for reassurance, watching the walls Karen built crumble. There was a third twist, wrenching yet vindicating, when the WA board president, a tall, frail woman who had rarely spoken in public meetings but always silently surveyed with wide, sorrowful eyes, stepped forward and, voice quivering, admitted that the board had been aware of Karen's enthusiasm for enforcing rules, but had lacked the courage to oppose her, because she was the unofficial rule enforcer, the one neighbors dreaded crafting humbling letters. But now, in light of cameras, police presence, and my photo of the spray can, thank God I'd snapped that in the chaos. She insisted the board would revoke Karen's voting privileges, remove her from any citizen patrol, and publicly apologize to me and to anyone else she had bullied. And as that frail voice echoed across the quiet neighborhood green, Faith, our golden companion, looked up, stubby tail wagging ever so slightly, as if sensing that justice, finally, was afoot. The fourth twist came later that evening when, in the aftermath, I discovered that the substance in that spray can, though marketed for ant control, contained a pesticide that's illegal in our county unless licensed applicators handle it, and nobody but Karen had even a permit. So the Environmental Health Department launched its own investigation, raising the stakes from animal cruelty to environmental hazard. And when I next looked at that spotless porch, from a cautious distance, it felt reduced, a place of shame instead of aesthetic pride. And I saw Karen inside, head bowed, shadows in the living room curtains betraying her remorse or perhaps her calculation. But here's the final twist that seals the story. A week later, Faith recovered, her trust rebounding, her tail wagging full and bright again, and I, still raw, still furious but transformed, got a call from a legal aid organization offering to take up Faith's case pro bono and to launch a broader campaign to educate WA boards across the region about service animal rights, to prevent any other family from being terrorized under the guise of neighborhood rules. And so what began as a terrifying, irrational act, HOA Karen's momentary outrage sprayed across Faith's sweet face, spiraled into something far bigger, a story of resilience, of law enforcing justice, of neighbors stepping forward to support rather than hide, of the vulnerability of a service dog revealing the fragility of unchecked authority, and the way one person's courage, fueled by love, law, and loyalty, can crack systems of coercion. And now, as I sit with Faith curled beside me, head resting on my leg, dream dozing at my feet, I reflect that though that afternoon felt like a nightmare turned slow motion, it ended in clarity. Justice may move slowly, but law and community, when summoned, can stop someone like WA Karen in her tracks, and make a service dog's whimper the spark that holds the powerful accountable.